This week in TechStars, we're talking with Brad Feld, we're talking with Roger Ehrenberg, both of whom are partners in the new $100,000 fund that goes to each and every TechStars company in the future. That's up right now, this week in TechStars. Hey everybody, I'm David Cohen, and this is This Week in TechStars. I'm the founder and CEO of TechStars. You have not stumbled upon an Al-Qaeda hostage video. This is actually the unfinished new studio here in our new office in Boulder. Michael Sidorzeski has been helping us set that up. Michael from Callisto FM, thanks so much.
Hello, you're welcome.
Also has a little help from Lamar, who's been helping set up the studio. It's looking good, but we need a little paint on the wall, some logos, maybe things like that. We're getting there.
Brand new studio, it's really close.
Yep, getting there.
Really close.
Pretty big week this week.
Indeed.
You've read some of the news, I'm sure.
Did you raise some money or something? Isn't that weird?
A little. What we announced is this $100,000 fund where every new TechStars company will get a $100,000 check. So it's actually bigger than $100,000. It's actually a $24 million fund.
Right.
So getting into TechStars now comes with not only the $18K that you get for getting into the program, but the offer from a great syndicate of VCs nationally to have another $100,000 as a convertible debt note. So we're obviously very excited about that, and we're going to spend some time on the show today talking about that. We have Brad Feld of the Foundry Group. I caught up with him when we were in Italy, so this will be just delayed a little bit from when I was on that trip, but it's a international version of This Week in TechStars. And we'll also catch up with Roger Ehrenberg, who I caught up with in our New York office. So trip around the world here on the show today.
Sweet.
Should be
Sounds
exciting.
like fun.
Also, just before we get into that, a little bit of news from this week outside of that 100K fund is also happening. So Simple Energy, read that they closed their round 900K with some great investors. That company came out of Boulder recently. It's focused on helping with energy savings and allowing utility companies to really leverage social to do that. Also Immersive Labs, Immersive out of New York. Yeah, really interesting company. These guys are on the TV show, the Bloomberg show that's going on right now. I think they raised about 800K, they just announced. And also have a great syndicate of investors. You can learn more about that company by watching TechStars on the Bloomberg channel. CrowdTwist also. Another company that was in the New York program during the show announced they just raised $6 million.
This is all a coincidence, right?
No, it has nothing to do with it. It's just what's happening this week in TechStars. The show is called This Week in TechStars. I thought I would go over some of the financings, sort of a new thing I'll do on the show every week when there are financings. I wore the Simple Energy shirt because they had a financing round.
You just like the little guy on the logo.
Yeah. Convey very recently, I don't think that was this week, but that was pretty recently, out of the Boston program, raised $2 million. So lots going on around TechStars. We'll catch up with some of those companies soon. You see SendGrid here. I want to just say thanks to SendGrid. Those guys just let me know that they just crossed 100 million emails a day that they're processing. What they do is they allow your application to send transactional email. It's the easiest way to make sure your email gets delivered out of your app and that you can report on it. You can just integrate it in a snap, and it's a great product. They also just landed a huge account, Spotify, so they're very excited about that. They have lots of big customers, and you should check out SendGrid. They're also doing an API Hack Day here in Boulder on November 8th, and we'll be at DFrag on November 9th, the conference. It's in Denver. It's a great conference. Lots of people come from all over the country for that. So check out SendGrid. Thank you to SendGrid for sponsoring the show. Let's go and roll this segment where when I was in Italy, I was catching up with Brad Feld, and we were talking about this new $24 million fund that gives each TechStars company an additional 100K. So let's roll to that and come back and talk about it. Very exciting week. On This Week in TechStars, we're talking with Brad about a new fund that will make sure that TechStars companies getting into the program starting in 2012 will get an extra $100,000 investment offered to them. Very exciting. I wanted to talk to Brad a little bit about the origin of that, how it came about, and why it matters.
So we've been talking for a while about an observation that we see within TechStars, which is that many of the companies within the first 4 to 6 weeks immediately start thinking about fundraising. There's a category of companies that don't need any money immediately after the program. But then there's a category of companies that, within 30 or 45 days after the program ends, they've got 3 or 4 people. They need to raise some money. We've also seen some of the companies in the program really start to accelerate and be in a position where if they hired, maybe 2 founders or 3 founders, they hired another person in the program, they could actually make even more progress faster. And so we decided to put together a way to get each of those companies funded with an incremental $100,000. We also approached it sort of very similar to the way that we thought about TechStars in general, which is making it inclusive rather than exclusive. So, instead of it being a single entity that's funding these companies, what we've got is a whole series of venture firms and a handful of individual sort of large angel investors who have been very involved in TechStars and have funded some of the individual programs in the different cities, who have been actively involved in investing in the companies in TechStars, who we invited to be part of Star Power.
So there's about a dozen or so partners that contribute to this sort of second level fund. So TechStars companies will get the same $18,000, whatever it is. Plus they'll be offered this incremental $100,000, really coming from the specific set of a dozen or so VCs. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking about, would I want to take that money or not? Obviously, it's an option.
Yep.
And what would, there would be an advantage to taking it because you'd have all these VCs that were really vested in your success, which is, I think, something unique about what we've done here.
I think everybody that's involved in Star Power that invested in the entity are people who understand TechStars really well. And I'll use Foundry Group, which is one of the investors, as the approach is that we invest in a relatively small number of companies coming out of TechStars, but we help a lot of them.
Yep.
And we already have a vested stake in them because as Foundry Group, we're also investors in TechStars, the different programs, just like the other 75 or so investors in New York and Boston, Seattle, and Boulder are. But in the amount that we have through that investment is very small. We still have a relatively small investment because we're splitting up that $100,000 by each of the different firms. So anybody's individual ownership stake, the basis is a relatively small dollar amount, but you get it across, this large pool of companies. The idea right now in terms of the funding that we put together is that we'll be able to comfortably fund at least the next 3 years of every TechStars company that goes through each of the 5 programs.
It's about 150
or so companies. So you end up getting a small stake in all of these companies that you're helping. And it gives you a vested interest in helping them, whether or not we then become the follow-on investors. Now, interestingly, that philosophy already exists within the TechStars system if you're a mentor. So many of and in fact, all of the firms that are investors are also mentors. So they're already invested in the companies, but this gives them a way to both help the companies earlier in their life, as well as give them a little bit more money. It also, I think, gets rid of any sort of the signaling issues around, that sort of early stage investment. Right. Because, we're actively involved and we have a stake regardless. So we want them to be successful. And in some cases, we'll be a much bigger investor in a few companies, but in a lot of cases, we won't be.
So people will say, maybe skeptics will say, okay, there's this group of VCs, they're throwing, millions of dollars over a few years, $100,000 per company, without even knowing what it is. You're really relying on the TechStars vetting process. Of course, a lot of the funds and mentors around the program are already involved in the vetting process, so they do, in a way, kind of contribute to selection. But is that, why is that a negative reaction? And what are the terms? Because I think the terms matter. With this kind of investment, it's a set of sensible terms that you guys are offering. Tell us a little bit about the note and how it'll work.
Yep. So I think the 2 different pieces. One is sort of this idea that we're investing in companies that are going through a program that now has a 5-6 year track record of generating lots of very interesting companies. And when you look at some of the successes that have come out of TechStars and you wind the clock forward, they come in unexpected places. There's a lot of companies that end up exiting the program that don't raise a lot of money.
Yep.
The company that we recently funded, Occipital, is a great example of it.
You think about it, $100,000 would have really helped them at that moment in time.
Made a huge amount of difference at that moment in time. They ended up not raising money and creating lots of value. And then by the time they raised venture money, for us it was, we're very comfortable with the pricing, but it was not as early a stage deal as it would have been. So I think you have this situation where you are able to help the companies, but also get some money at work as an investor early on, but in something that's really curated, and vetted via TechStars. From a terms perspective, we thought really hard about this and decided to come up with terms that were fair for these companies at their stage. So from an investment perspective, felt like a comfortable investment. We're doing it as a convertible note, so it's very, very simple. And so the money is being given at the beginning of the program. The companies get the use of it immediately. And we're not making a judgment as to whether or not, where the companies are sort of in their life cycle or in the dynamics. So from an investor perspective, and I think part of the thing that everybody got excited about is it's a pretty interesting seeds type of investment structure. Yeah. For the companies, it's a relatively small amount of capital, so dilution is small, but the impact is high.
Yeah, and I think the investors I've talked to are excited about the geographic diversity, but also just the diversity of the types of companies. I mean, we're funding, we did robotics, we had a 16-year-old, we have third and fourth time entrepreneurs, so they're getting sort of good exposure to a lot of things, both geographically and in terms of stage, I think, at least inside the early stage spectrum. What else should people know?
I think that our view of it structurally is something that's very simple for the entrepreneurs. So we've created a single entity that will be the investor rather than each of these individual funds. It also makes it easy for us to refresh the capital and add other investors into the pool if other people want to participate downstream. And I think our general feeling is that any of the TechStars investors who are actively involved that want to participate, are welcome to. And that's something that we'll continue to work out over time. Yep. I think it's also something that we view as a permanent long-term part of the program. So we've made a commitment that's enough to satisfy at least 3 years, but we anticipate that probably, when all the dust settles, it's much more than that.
Yeah, I mean, TechStars has always been about community, and that involves the investors. We've had, over 100 unique investors have participated in TechStars companies. It's been awesome to watch. So to the extent that some of those folks are watching and they're interested in the fund, they should reach out. Thanks for joining us, Brad.
My pleasure.
Italy. That definitely brings back memories of hanging out with Brad a few weeks back in Italy and catching up with him there about this new fund. So I want to clarify one thing. That is the $18,000 that TechStars invests. That's in exchange for the equity in the program. That hasn't changed. It's worked just like it's always worked in the past. It'll continue to work that way. This $100,000 is on top of that. So that means that TechStars companies can have $118,000 starting off as soon as they're in the program if they'd like to. So that's fabulous. $18K all the time, $100K at their option on great terms from an awesome set of investors nationally, including Brad Feld, who you just heard from, and the Foundry Group, as well as Roger Ehrenberg, who you'll hear from in a minute, and many other investors. So it's a great syndicate. Also, just wanted to mention, we did launch a new website amongst all this other stuff, and we'd love feedback from people who are checking out techstars.com. So we moved over from the .org. We're now on the .com finally chased down that squatter, and have a whole new look. And one of the things I think is so awesome about the website, and we're gonna do a show with Slice of Lime, who did the website soon, and really talk about this. But it's an adaptive design. So if you look at it on a mobile phone or you look at it on different size browsers, just try scaling your browser window. It's pretty awesome how the site behaves and reacts to that. We'll get into that more. I just want to also welcome a new sponsor to the show. I think this might be their second show they've sponsored. That's Twilio. I'm also an investor in that company. What a coincidence. And Twilio is a fantastic company. It allows you to quickly and easily integrate telephony, SMS, anything you do with a phone or phone system into your application with very little effort and very little expense. They take care of all the hard stuff of helping your application use the telephone or use text messaging. And it's incredibly scalable, awesome company, growing like crazy. I know they had their big developer conference very recently that was a big success. And also they just launched Twilio Connect. Twilio Connect makes it really, really easy if you're an app developer to integrate call services right into your app and monetize that way, but let Twilio handle all the hard stuff, not just the back end, but also all of the billing and all those technical details. So thanks to Twilio for helping sponsor the show. We want to get one more perspective for this new $100,000 deal that you've heard all about by now, and that's from Roger Ehrenberg of IA Ventures. I caught up with Roger while I was in our New York office recently. Here's his take.
It's This Week in TechStars, joined today by Roger Ehrenberg in our New York office. Thanks for hanging out.
It's a pleasure, David.
We're going to talk a little bit about the $100K additional funding for every single TechStars company nationally. You guys are participating in that as one of the essentially investors that
Yeah.
getting sort of exposure to all the companies nationally now, but 50 companies a year. So thrilled to have IA in the fund. Tell us a little bit about the fund, why you guys decided to participate in it.
Sure. So, we've been spending a lot of time with different TechStars programs across the country and obviously believe very deeply in the TechStars mission. I think it takes a lot of the anxiety that many of the companies have off the table by giving them this extra runway. And so instead of taking valuable time out of that incredibly short 3-month period and worrying about fundraising, instead of just building product, I think what we're going to see is the result of that 3-month period are just going to be that much better and set the TechStars companies up for even more attractive financings when they're done with the program.
Yep. The terms of this $100K, it's actually a note, as you know, and it's a sensible investment. I like to think of it that way. So the partners that got together, you guys set terms that I think are appropriate for the stage that these companies are at, and still are quite fair and generous. So I think the companies will get a lot out of it. My guess is most of them will take advantage of it. Of course, they don't have to.
Sure.
But when you think about TechStars is in Seattle and Boston and here in New York and in Boulder, and that diversity that you're kind of getting, a little bit of interest in each company, is that the main driver for being involved in the fund, or is it really just sort of promoting the ecosystem around TechStars?
No, I think we look at it on a standalone basis as an attractive investment.
Yep.
I mean, obviously, I think we deeply believe in the TechStars selection process so that the companies themselves that are in the program are high potential opportunities to begin with, and that by giving them this capacity to take this $100,000 on, what I would argue are attractive terms given the Asian stage, is going to make both our core investments in some of the TechStars programs more valuable, as well as our investment in Star Power more valuable.
You guys are also, here in New York, direct investors in the program. So, a lot of people may not know TechStars is funded by 75 VCs and angels nationally. So, when a company gets into TechStars, independent of this extra $100K that they're getting, they really have the support of a really broad community from the beginning. And I think, that can really help them because they have so many people trying to help out and making introductions and so on. You've probably seen that here in New York. We had a couple of companies that you guys are investors in already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are Think Near. I know there's one more.
CourseKit.
Okay, that's right in the program right now.
Yeah.
So from your perspective, why a company that you're already a seed investor in, why put them through TechStars, or why encourage that?
Sure, and we've spent a bunch of time educating our companies about why they should apply to TechStars and why, if they were selected, they should really do it. I think we believe the trade of a little bit of equity give up for the incredible acceleration in their product development, the exposure to the mentors, the ecosystem and the networks that they build far outstrip the give up. So we feel great as investors having our companies participate in TechStars and feel very fortunate when they are given that opportunity.
Yeah, so you've been a mentor here in New York. You've been around some of the other programs as well. What's the number one reason that you're really doing this? I mean, a lot of people know that you're not going to invest in every single company. Well, now you are. You're not going to invest big money in every single company
Sure.
that comes out. You also do it, I assume, just because it sort of helps New York get better, and New York is on fire right now. But talk about your motivations for really helping out as a mentor a little bit.
Sure. So part of it is helping seed stage finance in general. I mean, even though obviously based in New York, I spent a lot of time in Boston. I've been a mentor in the Boston program. My colleague Brad has been a Seattle mentor. My colleague Ben has been a Boulder mentor. So we really do believe in trying to give back. We also love building the relationships with the other mentors. I mean, quite frankly, there is this ecosystem among companies and among mentors. So it creates these beneficial network effects that help everybody. And then, of course, sure, there are those kind of occasional companies that are such a great match with our investment thesis and the chemistry with management that we ultimately do want to lead an investment. And when that happens, that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I remember early on in Boulder, Brad Feld, obviously, instrumental in getting TechStars off the ground there. His view was he's probably never going to fund a company that sort of naturally comes out of TechStars. And in the first couple of years, that was true, right? But it really built over time, and there were better and better, more and more interesting companies that were sort of coming to town that weren't already there. And now he's made, I think, 3 or 4, pretty big investments in TechStars companies. Hopefully, we can do the same thing here for IA. Really source some cool stuff for you guys.
Yeah, no, that's certainly that would be wonderful. And look, again, we're not doing it explicitly for that reason, but is it our hope that every couple of programs we discover a company that we want to back? Sure.
Yep. And it takes a little time to get rolling, but I think hopefully that's in the future. So tell us a bit about IA for people that might not know. I know you're personally really focused on big data.
Sure.
But tell us about the fund itself.
Yes. So IA Ventures is focused on really data using data to create competitive advantage, and it could be either the technologies that enable that or the applications that leverage large real-time data sets. And we're geographically agnostic. We're based in New York, but we've got investments in New York and Boston and the Valley and LA, London and Tel Aviv. So we really are very thematic, but we begin at the seed stage, and we really act like a classic VC. We reserve very heavily for follow-on rounds, and we really kind of view ourselves as life cycle investors from seed to B. Once it gets beyond B, that's for the larger funds.
Mm-hmm. Well, awesome. Well, we're thrilled to have you as a mentor in TechStars, and I know the companies have been thrilled to have you working with them. So appreciate everything you do for us, and we'll just keep rocking it.
Thanks,
David. A lot for your time.
Super excited.
Just a quick reminder, TechStars, the documentary series, episode 2 aired last week. Episode 3 is coming up on Tuesday. It's at 9 o'clock Eastern, and every Tuesday all the way through episode 6. You can also watch all that online at bloomberg.com/TechStars, so you can see episodes 1 and 2 if you missed them. Catch up to the show. Let us know what you think about that. We had a blast making that early in 2011 in New York. Everything on the show is 100% real. You're going to see some crazy issues go down with the companies coming up soon. And it just shows you what it's like and how tough it is to really do a startup. So hopefully that helps people understand that and understand the value of mentorship. We also have applications open right now for 2012 programs. So the Boston program coming up in January, and in New York, I believe in March or April. It's all on the website under schedule. You can apply to any of the 2012 programs right now. Most of you probably know, we recently also announced TechStars Cloud, which is a thematic accelerator. It's focused really exclusively on cloud infrastructure companies. So a company like Twilio, one of our sponsors, would be a great fit, although maybe they're a little too far along by now. But if you're starting up a company that is building infrastructure on the cloud, SendGrid, Twilio, something like that, it's a great fit. Anything that's really an innovative cloud service, great fit for that program. Jason Seitz is managing that program. He is the founder of SliceHost, knows a little bit about this stuff, and that's happening with lots of great mentors from Rackspace and SoftLayer. In fact, Jeff Lawson from Twilio is also one of the mentors. So you can apply to cloud as well right now. And just want to leave you, I guess, with one last thing. Some viewers were saying that they would love to see some pitches from past TechStars demo days. So we thought we would just sort of end the show, but right after this, you will see a pitch from RoundPeg. It's from a couple years ago, but hopefully it can give you some insight into what it's like to pitch at demo day and maybe how to pitch your own company and get some ideas from it. So we'll leave you with that. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on This Week in TechStars.
Hi, I'm Tim Walters, 4-time serial entrepreneur and CEO of RoundPeg. This is my partner, Brent Daly, and Dr. Natalie Baumgartner, our chief psychologist and 13-year veteran of bringing business psychology to the hiring process. I'm just going to say this. We all suck at hiring. I know this because half of the people hired this year will either quit or they'll be fired within 18 months. And it's not because they don't have the skills to do the job, it's because they're a poor fit with the company culture. At RoundPeg, we solve that problem by scientifically ensuring every hire you make fits. It's not that the hiring process is broken necessarily, it's just incomplete. Whether square pegs or round, you're sourcing more candidates than ever before. And you're doing an awesome job at reviewing the resumes and interviewing the candidates to ensure those skills are real. And then doing back-channel reference checks to make sure that the skills are there as well. You're doing all the right things, and you're using all the tools available to you, but still half of the people you hire will fail. And there's the problem. You're spending all of your time, your money, and your energy hiring for skills, but the people are failing due to fit. Basically, at the end of this funnel, you're flipping a coin. Now, I've felt this pain repeatedly. In the last 3 companies that I've started, I bet you have too. I remember this rock star sales guy I hired. This guy had the Rolodex, had everything going, but he would actually walk down to development and scream at the developers to get the damn product finished. He would just create chaos wherever he went in the organization. So I became just hugely frustrated by this whole thing, and I ended up spending tens of thousands of dollars on bringing in business psychologists like Natalie to help. And she helped a lot. But the cost was killing me. I couldn't use her for every hire I was going to make. So I thought, wow, what if I could turn her process into easy-to-use software that companies could use for every hire they needed to make at a fraction of the cost? And thus RoundPeg was born. We put the doc in a box. Now, Natalie has spent her entire career focusing on fit, and she's been conducting key hire assessments for over 13 years, and she's achieved 91% success at that. So we baked her process into software. Dr. Natalie, can you show us how it's done?
Well, as Tim learned, hiring for fit is possible. As you can imagine, it isn't easy. There are so many complex dynamics that are involved in whether someone will fit your company. RoundPeg uses 3 short surveys to measure each of these and turns the complexity of this into this. RoundPeg's easy-to-use, actionable fit guide, customized for each candidate based on who they are. Let me show you a quick example. So imagine for a moment that you run a hippie liberal news station here in Boulder, and you're hiring. You're hiring a new senior political correspondent. The top skilled candidates emerge. Now, at face value, these guys seem equally strong, right? They both have impressive resumes and relevant work experience, and they both were personable and even marginally funny during their phone interviews. So using today's hiring process, you'd be stuck flipping a coin to figure out which of these guys to hire. RoundPeg solves that problem by giving you the tools that you need to look under the hood to determine what makes each of these candidates really tick. We measure and analyze this complex scientific data behind the scenes and help you understand which candidate will best fit your company and your team. In this case, Mr. Stewart is clearly forwarded to the next round, giving you an opportunity to examine the differences between him and your existing group. Now, Mr. Stewart's a great fit, but he does have one misalignment with your high performers. Specifically, your group's actually quite a cheerful bunch, but Mr. Stewart, not a surprise, is not. RoundPeg's Fit Guide identifies each misalignment and gives you the interview questions to ask, the responses to listen for, and a guide to help you determine whether those misalignments are likely to cause issues or perhaps even complement your existing team. We give you the insights you need to determine whether a misalignment is a deal breaker. The difference in success rate between the status quo in hiring today and RoundPeg's system is night and day. This is a proven process. It works. We've made it even smarter by adding machine learning and statistical analysis, things that consultants like me just can't provide. We've blended psychology with technology. So you can go on flipping coins, or you can choose to stack the odds in your favor. Every company out there has this issue, and each of them is looking for a solution. We know this is true because our customers are telling us so. Nothing exists like round peg.
This is obviously a massive problem. How massive? Well, the stat kind of surprised me, but even in this down economy, over $50 billion will be spent this year alone to hire 25 million white-collar workers, and 12 million of those will fail. And each one of those failures is costly. 150% of annual compensation for the position, including the costs of recruiting, advertising, time spent interviewing, wasted salaries, not to mention the impact that it has on morale. It all adds up very quickly. And our customers tell us this. Just in the meeting that we spent with Dish alone, they said they'd spent $100,000 on mishires. In fact, if you have a portfolio of growing companies and you don't want to waste precious capital on bad hires, you should get those teams on round peg today. So where are we at? Just since joining TechStars 13 short weeks ago, that's gone by like crazy fast, we've signed up 7 paying enterprise customers. And we have over 90 prospects in our pipeline, including these Fortune 500 companies with whom we're in late-stage discussions. And we have solutions that fit all the way from an individual team all the way through the large enterprise. And we're focusing our energy on selling SaaS-based monthly subscriptions into those large enterprises. And we have the team to do it. We're a team of seasoned entrepreneurs. And we've taken in investment in the past, and we've returned on that investment. We have the perfect blend of experience in artificial intelligence and data mining, building software businesses, organizational psychology, and most importantly, as Roundpeg shows, we're a great fit.